At 9:02 p.m. on January 2nd of 2000, an 18-year-old had just left his job at Walmart. Shortly after, he went to a gas station with a friend and was never seen or heard from again. 2 weeks later, on January 16th of 2000, his car was found in a restaurant parking lot. He wasn't in the car, but a Labrador mixed puppy that was alive was, and there had been lips with an exclamation mark written on the back windshield. This is the mysterious case of Zebb Quinn. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also pottery. This tends to calm my nerves. But anyway, today's story is a very interesting one with some very bizarre twists and turns. Zebb Wayne Quinn was born on May 12th of 1981 in Asheville, North Carolina, to his mother Denise Lahakis and his father Jerry Wayne Quinn. Jerry was a Vietnam veteran and worked as a bartender for a long time. He ended up owning his own bar. I'm not entirely sure what Denise did prior, but I do know she worked as a nurse or at the hospital in some way. Not a crazy amount of information about Zebb's early life is out there, but at the age of 2, his parents split up, and from that moment forward until Zebb was 16 years old, he barely ever saw his father. Denise raised Zebb and his older sister, whose name was Brandy. It's known that Zebb had trouble in school and had pretty bad grades. He had a learning disability that was called scatter, and this made him have trouble to keep more than one task. Sometime, I believe in middle school, he joined the ROTC, or the Reserve Officers Training Corps, and overall Zebb was a stand-up guy. He was super friendly and a downright nice person. Zebb's mother Denise said she kinda saw him as a sort of backward geek kind of guy. She said he would always talk to her about what was on his mind because he didn't have too many friends that were his own age that he felt comfortable to talk to. Zebb was always the kind of guy who never came home late without calling first, and he would send messages to his mom's pager to let her know where he was at. Just in case you're unfamiliar, a pager is also considered to be a beeper, and according to Wikipedia, it's a wireless telecommunications device that receives and displays alphanumeric or voice messages. One-way pagers can only receive messages, while response pagers and two-way pagers can also acknowledge, reply to, and originate messages using an internal transmitter. It was the common thing for those years, and Zebb used his all of the time. I don't know what kind he had though. I believe his could only receive messages. But when Zebb was about 16 or so, he began to drive and he started to see his father Jerry a bit more, and they formed a relationship. But Zebb still was a mama's boy, and it was even said that in his late teens, he'd still cuddle up with his mother on the couch to watch TV. Very sweet, but in 1999, Zebb graduated from Robertson High School. At the time, he had a job at Walmart in the electronics department on Hendersonville Road and continued working that job for money. I believe he was attempting to become a part of management at Walmart. Zebb started attending Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College and had pretty good grades in college. He loved wearing Tommy Hilfiger clothes and the cologne, and Zebb had recently just gotten into playing billiards. He was 18 years old between late 1999 to 2000, and I'm now going to really get into things. Over the course of this video, I'll be showing you a family tree type of chart so you can understand the dynamics about who is who, as I'm going to be mentioning quite a lot of names. First off, we'll start with Zebb's parents, Jerry Quinn and Denise Lahakis. Together they had Zebb and his sister Brandy. Eventually, Jerry and Denise split. I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point, Denise began dating a man named Costa Vlahakis. They would later get married. Zebb really liked Costa and thought of him to be a really nice guy and good for his mother. Costa owned his own restaurant called Costa's Kitchen, and Zebb would hang around there pretty frequently. I think his mother may have as well. But at Costa's Kitchen, there was a waitress named Tamra Taylor. Tamra just so happened to be best friends and next-door neighbors to Ina Hustich. Ina was the sister of Jerry Quinn, or Zebb's father. Tamra had a daughter named Misty Taylor, and she was 19 years old and had a baby with a guy who she was still dating named Wesley Smith. It was said that Wesley harmed Misty physically and emotionally, and all that Misty talked about was how awful he was to her. But Zebb had met Misty at his stepfather's restaurant, and Zebb had started to really catch feelings for her, and Misty really led him on. Zebb started to tell people, including friends at Walmart and family members, about Misty, and they tried to stray him away as they didn't see what he was doing as a good idea. Zebb started to hang with Misty quite a lot, and they went to the mall, they went to restaurants, they played billiards, and I believe that at one point, Zebb even paid for Misty and her baby to get new clothes. This was all while Misty was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Wesley Smith. It was late in the year of 1999 when they met, probably around late November to early December, and it appears as if Misty was just using him. The first time she ever paged him was on December 20th of 1999, so I can't imagine that they even knew each other for very long. Zebb had spent his New Year's at home playing PlayStation. I believe it was the night before that or the night after that he was at his dad's home when he was on the phone. A friend of Zebb's father said she saw Zebb leave the room very upset after a phone call he had. She doesn't know who was on the other line. This friend of Zebb's father also said that Zebb and Wesley, Misty's boyfriend, started to have some sort of issues with each other, and a threat had actually made its way to Zebb. It basically stated to leave Misty alone, or Wesley and his friends were going to do something about it. On Sunday, January 2nd of 2000, Zebb woke up and hours later he was at his home with his grandmother, Sylvia Clymer. I believe this was his mother's mother, but she had seen Zebb on the phone talking to Misty. Sylvia said that Zebb had told her probably a few days prior that Misty told Wesley that he had to help out more with the baby, and he left. Sylvia said that after that phone call with Misty though, Zebb hung up pretty quickly and told his grandmother he's back, referring to Wesley. Later this day, Zebb had work, as he typically did. He had been saving up to buy a newer car as he was driving a 1990 Mazda Protege. He wanted a Mitsubishi Eclipse, though. So while at work, I'm guessing this was also probably days or weeks prior, he had been talking to a coworker. Some articles say best friend. I don't think that's the case. This coworker's name was Robert Jason Owens, and I did see an article from one of Zebb and Jason's peers that said they hung out for a few years as teenagers because Zebb rode BMX a bit and didn't really have anyone to ride with until Jason came along. I'm not sure of the validity of that, but whatever their true relationship was, it sure wasn't a valid one. Though I do know they played pool together and fished a few times and hung out a little bit. But while at work on that Sunday, Zebb was just finishing up his shift in the electronics department when he ran into Jason as he went by and told him how he's looking to buy a Mitsubishi Eclipse. Now, to get a little background about Robert Jason Owens, I believe he was about 22 years old at the time. He worked at both Walmart and a Volvo plant, and he was just bad news. Going back to our family tree chart, it was stated in some articles and places that Jason was distant cousins with Wesley. Take this with a grain of salt, as once again, the information for this case is very scattered, and what is fully truthful is hard to really know. But basically, when Zebb saw Jason and told him how he's looking for the eclipse, Jason told him he just so happens to know where one that's for sale is located, and that he'll take him there and show him it. It was located on Leicester Highway. I guess maybe it could have been a dealership or something. So after Zebb clocked out of work at 9:02 p.m. and met Jason in the parking lot, for some reason, they decided to take differing cars. You would think if you're going to check out a car, you would take the same one in case the car gets bought, but they didn't. And so at 9:14 p.m., a convenience store located on Hendersonville Road caught Zebb and Jason on camera buying sodas together and then driving away in separate cars. Zebb was following Jason. A few minutes went by, and this is when Zebb had gotten a message on his pager. He flashed his headlights at Jason, and then supposedly the two pulled off of the road. Zebb then got out of his car and asked Jason if he had a cell phone so he could call the person who was paging him. Jason didn't have a pager, and so Zebb said he's got to get out of there and went back to his car. Jason said that he didn't know what was wrong or what happened, that Zebb was just in a hurry, and that he said he had to go to a payphone. Zebb then left to find a payphone at about 9:20 p.m., and he returned to the convenience store and used the phone. He returned about 10 minutes later around 9:30 p.m. Zebb apparently, while pulling up behind Jason's car, hit him, and Zebb told him that he'd pay for any damage, but that he just got another page and said that he couldn't go check out the car, that he's gotta go. Zebb then drove away, and this was the last time that anyone had ever seen or heard from him again. At 9:32 p.m. that night, or January 2nd of 2000, Zebb's mother Denise tried paging him and paged him several times throughout the night. She had assumed he stopped somewhere to play some pool with friends and forgot to tell her that he was going to be late. As the night went on, Denise became more worrisome because Zebb wasn't answering. The next morning, on January 3rd of 2000, Denise woke up and started calling every person she knew. She even called Misty Taylor and asked if she knew where Zebb was. She told him she didn't know a thing. Misty had supposedly spent the night of January 2nd of 2000 with Wesley, her mother Tamra, and also Zebb's aunt, Ina. They were all having dinner together at Tamra's house. Eventually, Denise had called Walmart and spoken to the supervisor, a woman named Patricia Andrick. Denise told her what happened, and Patricia said she'll let Denise know if she hears anything. After some time, Denise called the police and tried to file a missing persons report. But unfortunately, they said there wasn't much they could do because Zebb was 18, and it appeared as if he just ran off. Denise was convinced that this was not the case. Zebb would never run away without telling anyone. He loved his mother and family very deeply. Later that same day, or January 3rd, a phone call was made from a no-name caller to the Walmart, and the supervisor, Patricia Andrick, answered this call. The person on the other line said that they were Zebb and that they were calling out today. Patricia immediately could tell that this was not Zebb because 1, it sounded nothing like him, and 2, this person appeared suspicious and off. Patricia eventually hung up and then dialed star 69, which would bring the number back up with where it was located. This call was made from the Volvo plant that Jason worked at. The police then went to the plant and immediately located Jason, and Jason told them that Zebb called him and begged him to make the call to Walmart. He said he had no idea Zebb didn't go home or that he was missing. Jason was the last person to see Zebb and made a phone call to his work to call out for him. The police must have been sorta suspicious because they supposedly gave Jason a polygraph test and he passed it. Also, get this right, Jason, the morning of January 3rd, went to the hospital and was treated for a head injury and fractured ribs. He stated that it was because of a car accident. No police report or anything else about this accident, and a great question is, did anyone check on Jason's car to see if he was actually in an accident? Apparently, the police thought the injuries weren't consistent with the minor accident he said happened. Regardless, things were getting more and more suspicious as time would pass. 2 weeks after Zebb disappeared is when a huge but very bizarre clue came. On January 16th of 2000, Zebb's car randomly appeared in the parking lot of Little Pig's Barbecue. This wasn't far from the hospital where both Zebb's mother and sister worked. Zebb's car was found and things were very off. First off, the keys were in the ignition with the headlights on. Inside of the car, there were hair follicles and fibers that didn't belong to Zebb, a few drink bottles and a jacket that did not belong to Zebb, a room key to a hotel. Some articles say that there may have been a bag of the good green, and also a Labrador mix puppy that was about 3 months old and still alive. Not only this, but the driver's seat was positioned very close to the steering wheel, as if the last person to drive it was pretty short. On the outside of Zebb's car, there was an exclamation mark with a pair of lips written in orange pink lipstick. The police said that they were absolutely baffled by this and checked to see if there was some sort of ritual or cult involved, but they ruled that out pretty quickly. Now we're going to really get into some bizarre things about this case. First off, I stated how Ina Eustich, or Zebb's aunt, or his father Jerry's sister, just so happened to be having dinner with Misty Taylor, Wesley Smith, and Tamra Taylor. Zebb was invested with Misty, and so it's either a very small world or some things just aren't right. Most people would probably say that things aren't right. Now get this. On January 2nd of 2000, Zebb received a page to where he frantically had to get out of the situation he was in. That page came from his Aunt Ina's number, and it must have said something serious. Something even stranger is that 3 minutes after Zebb received that page, a phone call came into Aunt Ina's home from Zebb's father, Jerry Quinn's home. For starters, Aunt Ina swears up and down that she did not page Zebb that night and that she wasn't even home. Jerry said that he also wasn't home, that he was working and doesn't know who could have done that. Also, the police department told Aunt Ina that there were a ton of mysterious phone calls being made from her apartment days after Zebb disappeared. Aunt Ina said that she was never home the days those calls were made, and that one day when she got home, her phone was moved to a different part of her house, and that one day a picture from her wall was on the floor and broken, that she got super scared, that no one else had a key to her apartment, and so she called the detectives to let them know. Aunt Ina said the bullies followed her for several months, but that she was innocent, and also said that she passed a polygraph test. Aunt Ina said she could never do anything to harm Zebb, and that she loves him and wants to find out what happened, just like everyone else. Aunt Ina would eventually move states and go to Tennessee. Zebb's father, Jerry, had stated at the time that he thought it was Misty's boyfriend who did something to him, and that he better hopes that he doesn't see Jerry, because Jerry will choke him out. Jerry said if he finds something out, he doesn't care, he will go out and finish it. That he was a sergeant in the Marines and an expert with many guns, that it would be like killing a dog with rabies. Jerry also stated that he threatened his sister Ina and said to her that if he finds out she's hiding something, he's going to cripple her for life. That every time she gets up, she'll hobble and think about him. That yeah, she's family, but Zebb is his baby. Jerry said that Aunt Ina cried for several days and swore she knew nothing, but that something made him feel pretty weird about her. After all of this stuff, however, somehow the case began to go cold, and in fact, it would go cold for a very long time. Though the police did go through some updates over the years, which I'll list. First, on Wednesday, February 14th, or Valentine's Day of 2001, a Superior Court judge issued a search warrant for Jason Owens and authorized officers to draw hair, blood, and saliva samples. This was after they supposedly collected enough evidence to establish probable cause. They stated that DNA evidence was found in both of the vehicles and that they'll be able to compare the evidence. Nothing ever came from this. On Wednesday, November 6th of 2002, Robert Jason Owens was arrested after leading an officer on a high-speed police chase. On October 29th of 2002, the police had thought he was driving while intoxicated and tried to stop his truck. He then led the officer on a chase that got up to 80 miles per hour and also shot at the officer. Shortly after, Jason crashed into a mailbox and flipped the truck. He was taken to the hospital and stayed there for 9 days. I believe he was in critical condition at one point. Eventually, police arrested Jason after he was discharged from the hospital, and his charges were eluding arrest and assault on a law enforcement officer with a firearm. He was being held on a $25,000 bond. Jason pled guilty to this and was placed into prison for 8 months. It was found that he was intoxicated, and also the car had an expired registration. On Wednesday, December 31st of 2003, the police released the footage of Zebb and Jason at the convenience store the night Zebb disappeared. In 2004, nothing really happened, and in 2005, Zebb's sister Brandy said this: "My brother's downfall was that he was naive and gave everyone the benefit of the doubt. I think he was placed in a position he didn't see coming and didn't know how to get out." Also, Jason Owens filed for bankruptcy this year. In 2005, the police released a reenactment of what they thought may have happened, but I couldn't find that. The same year, or November 19th of 2005, Jason Owens went out of state and a warrant was issued for his arrest to bring him back. I'm guessing this was because he was a felon, as the warrant was for a fugitive out of state. A few months later, on February 12th of 2006, Jason was arrested again for being intoxicated and disruptive, resisting a police officer, and failure to appear on a misdemeanor. In 2007, the police would do something very interesting. But first, on January 1st of 2007, Jason was arrested again, this time for failing to appear for a felony possession of a Schedule I controlled substance, habitual impaired driving, a DWLR or driving while license revoked, expired or no inspection, exceeding safe speeds, unsafe tires, and a failure to appear on a misdemeanor. Then, on February 3rd of 2007, Jason was arrested again for resisting a public officer, being intoxicated, and disruptive. A few months later, on Friday, April 13th of 2007, the police used ground-piercing radar to search Jason Owens' property. This technology was used to find graves. I don't think anything came from this, but several months later, on Friday, December 7th of 2007, Jason Owens was involved in yet another high-speed police chase. This one lasted about 26 minutes and over a 41-mile stretch. The police were conducting a routine license check when they tried stopping Jason, and he sped off. They reached speeds of up to 100 miles per hour, and eventually the police stopped Jason, and he was charged with fleeing and eluding arrest with a motor vehicle, resisting a public officer, speeding and failing to heed to a light or siren, a DWLR, and failing to wear a seatbelt. Plus, for some reason, trespassing. He was being held under an $11,000 bond. Jason eventually forfeited bond and went back to jail for a period of time. Now 2 years would go by, and on October 8th of 2009, police retrieved 50 hair, fingerprint, and saliva samples from Misty Taylor. The police said that the reason they got it was because, for some reason, they didn't originally, even though they said they obtained DNA samples from most of the rest of his social circle years ago. They also said that there was no new evidence or new leads, and that this was just a routine review of the case file, that detectives were looking for any unfinished work. During this talk and gathering Misty's samples, she said that Zebb had a strong interest in her, but she said that their relationship was just casual. It's also important to point out that a couple had apparently seen someone driving Zebb's car well after he disappeared, I believe the day his car was found. They called the police and told them about this and gave them a composite sketch, and here's what the police came up with. That photo is absolutely terrifying. I also couldn't find when exactly the police used it or released it, but apparently they said it really resembled Misty Taylor. The couple, however, said the sketch wasn't a great resemblance. Also, on October 23rd of 2009, Jason Owens was arrested again for a DWLR and resisting a police officer. From 2010 to 2014, nothing would really happen. Jason got arrested on August 8th of 2012 for a DWLR, and also in 2010, Wesley Smith, Misty's boyfriend, had gotten DNA samples taken from him, but still nothing came from that. There was zero updates in the Zebb Quinn case until something horrible happened in 2015. This next part honestly could be an entire case just by itself, but Christy Schoen Codd was 38 years old and had just recently gotten married to her husband, Joseph or JT Codd. I'll let Christy explain her life a little bit for you.
My name is Christy, and I'm from Biloxi, Mississippi, but I live out in Marina Del Rey, California. I would describe myself as outgoing, adventurous. I like to challenge myself, go out and hike and run. I'm very, very athletic. My father is a big cook. He was in the Air Force, and throughout that time, we've traveled all over the world. He's always been a big cook with delicious entrees and foods and desserts, and my parents worked a lot, so we had to do a lot of our own cooking. And that's when I started doing my own thing. I am a movie caterer, so I cater big budget movies. Catering is an advantage in terms of feeding the masses because I'm all about getting the food done and making it delicious at the same time. My culinary point of view is fresh, organic, delicious, healthy cuisine. If I became the next Food Network star, it wouldn't be about changing my life. It would be more about changing everybody else's lives that are watching my show. I would hope that I could convey a message out to my audience and help change lives in a very, very positive and healthy way. Woo! Woo! A lot of people would die to have this kind of opportunity to be on a competition show for the Food Network, especially. You know, I am just extremely excited and I am so ready to just start this already.
It was also said that Christy was a phenomenal chef who loved cooking for everybody. She became a part of the finals for a show called Food Network Star. I believe Christy also did catering for movies as well. JT, Christy's husband, was 45 years old and known for being a very generous person. He was a non-judgmental guy who helped out everyone he knew. JT apparently one time lived homeless to experience what it was like, and it was said that he was a huge advocate for the underdog. JT would eventually find himself in California working on TV and film productions as a grip, and according to Screen Skills, while directors think of the artistry of the shots, grips work out how they are going to move the cameras to make that happen. Before filming starts, grips break down the script and work out with the director of photography what equipment will be needed to support the cameras for each scene. They go on recess to check out the location. JT and Christy met this way and eventually became friends, and then more than friends. Their personalities were similar, and they were just two peas in a pod. The couple began adventuring, and soon they fell in love with each other. Eventually, they wanted to settle down somewhere kind of quiet that they could create their dream farm life. And so they moved to Leicester, North Carolina, specifically to the address 87 Hookers Gap Road. This was only a 5-minute drive from 8 Owens Cove Road. And the person that just so happened to live here was Jason Owens. He lived there with his wife Samantha. The two of them got married in 2011, and together they made a total of about $800 a month. Jason was pulling in about $300 somehow, even though he said he was unemployed. The house or trailer that Jason lived in was either given to him or he acquired it somehow. But when Christy and JT moved in down the road, Jason was very quick to notice. Jason was also supposedly a contractor, and so Christy and JT hired him to help them with some projects around their house and farm. Not only this, but in September of 2014, Christy and JT had a beautiful wedding with all of their friends and family there about 15 minutes outside of Asheville, North Carolina. They also invited a few of the locals from town, and that included Jason Owens. One guest from the wedding said that he remembers seeing Jason with whoever he brought and thinking that it was weird, that they didn't seem like the kind of people you would find around Christy and JT. Another wedding guest said that he had gotten a gut feeling when he looked at Jason and just avoided him, that he was one person that he definitely did not want to meet. But shortly after this wedding, Christy and JT announced that Christy was pregnant and that they were expecting a girl in July. Her name was going to be Skylar. Now, from September of 2014 to March of 2015, some things were going to happen. First off, Christy and JT had given Jason about $7,000 total to help them clear trees and also build a well house. Not only this, but they trusted him enough to give him a key to their storage sheds and their tools. It was said that JT always tried to look for the good in people and help people who needed it. He felt like Jason needed the help, but this caused some issues. As JT was needing work and ready to pay for it, people started coming to their house, and this made Christy concerned. Apparently, a guy stopped by their house trying to sell some sort of rifle, and another guy went there asking JT for cash. JT said to this man he'd help fill up his gas tank, but that's it. Christy did not want people coming up to their house and started to become fearful of being alone. Inside of their home, they did have 3 guns, however. I also read that JT called the police one day to report a breaking and entering, but I'm not sure of what happened, though we can probably assume some things soon. Christy and JT were having a bonfire one day after the wedding, or it may have been the day of the wedding, but a friend of theirs named James was there. He was talking to Christy, and all of a sudden he saw a guy kneeling down about to tackle someone, and this man then jumped and pulled another guy down by his feet. James ran over, and this guy just so happened to be Jason Owens. James yelled at Jason to stop, that it's not that kind of party. As Jason was getting up, he swung at James. Jason missed, and James pushed him to the ground and kept him down. Jason's friend went over to get James off of him and walk Jason off the property, but Jason wanted to fight James. James told JT after this happened, and JT said that it was okay to just let it go. He shrugged it off. In November of 2014, Christy cooked dinner for Thanksgiving for both her and JT, and also a ton of people in town, including Jason. Christy and JT treated Jason with the utmost respect, even though he was significantly a lower class than they were, and how he repaid them is pure evil. On March 15th of 2015, Bill Schoen, Christy's father, had first called a friend of Christy and JT's named Cecilia Owens. She just so happened to be the aunt of Jason Owens. But Cecilia went inside and knew something was immediately wrong when she first smelled it, and it smelled like feces and urine. That's because Christy and JT had dogs, and the dogs went to the bathroom inside of the house. Cecilia was concerned right away because the couple would never leave their dogs like that, and things just seemed off. The reason that Christy's father called Cecilia in the first place was because Christy, and I believe JT also, were supposed to be in Mississippi at 4 p.m. to see Christy's family. Christy's father was very worried because he hadn't had any contact with Christy for several days. Though Christy's father did say his wife talked to Christy the day before through text message on March 14th. But after Cecilia had checked the house, she called Christy's father back and told him what she saw. He called the police and requested a welfare check, and within minutes, the police were there. The police then went inside after nobody answered, and they saw Christy's purse and JT's wallet. A medicine cabinet was open with band-aids that were removed, and the police also found their dogs. But there were zero signs of Christy and JT. The police then looked into both of their phone records and saw text messages on both March 10th and the 11th that came from JT's phone, and it went to none other than Jason Owens. On March 15th of 2015, at about 8:30 p.m., somebody reported to the police that they saw Jason dumping large trash bags into a dumpster outside of a house. The detectives then went to check the dumpster and found out the items inside belonged to Christy. The police, with enough probable cause, went and arrested Jason early in the morning on Monday, March 16th of 2015. And at first, he claimed he had no idea what happened to the couple. He was arrested for breaking and entering and also larceny for stealing from the Codds. It wouldn't be long before Jason revealed everything to the police, and it was absolutely sickening. It was found that Jason also pawned items that he stole from Christy and JT as well. But Jason told the police he had gotten stuck in a creek by their home. They tried to help him get out, and they were standing in front of his truck when he hit the accelerator and ran both of them over. I already have a question there. If he was stuck, how was he able to drive? And also, I've never heard of anyone being in the front of someone's vehicle to help them get out from being stuck. But Jason basically stated that JT died instantly from being ran over and that Christy was still alive. So he ran inside with her and tried to help her in the living room, but she ended up passing away. Jason said he then ran outside and found JT dead. He said that he wasn't supposed to be driving because of previous convictions and didn't want to go to jail. So he carried JT's body to his trailer and burned his body in their wood stove. The next day, Jason went back to the Codds' home, put Christy's body in the shower, and cut it up, and then put all of the parts into plastic bags. He then went back to his house and put all the parts into the wood stove and burned them. Afterwards, Jason said he wanted to make this look like a robbery gone wrong, and so he started to sell and steal their stuff. He also admitted to making texts from Christy's phone to her relatives. Jason continued by saying that he took some of the money he got from pawning their stuff and filled up his truck with gas and took his wife out to dinner. Another question here is, where was Jason's wife when he was burning the bodies inside of the wooden stove 2 days in a row? She lived with him, and they were both unemployed. But regardless, Jason told the police that he's not a bad guy. He eventually entered a guilty plea for 3 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of dismemberment. This was for Christy, JT, and their unborn baby girl. Jason, in April of 2017, was given a minimum 60-year prison sentence, which I don't understand how he isn't automatically given life. Absolutely sickening what Jason did to that poor couple, but the story doesn't end here. And in fact, Jason would eventually come out with some new information that would pertain to the disappearance of Zebb Quinn. First, while Jason was in jail awaiting charges, someone burned down his double-wide trailer, I believe the day after he was arrested. He then wrote a letter to his neighbor, and inside of this letter is some revealing things. Jason stated,
"As you all know, somebody burned down the double-wide, and that somebody was my Uncle Gene. No doubt he burned it to send me a warning because I'm safe from him in here. I have lived in fear of him since Jan 2000 because of what I witnessed him doing and the threats he made me. Scott took the restraining order out on Gene right after Mom's passing to keep him away from Owens Cove Road out of fear of him. Anyway, I'm telling you guys this because I have shared what I witnessed. Gene committing murder, with law enforcement, and he now knows I told. So if you guys see him or anything odd around this place, call the cops and Samantha.
Also in the letter, Jason revealed that one of his dog's names was Misty. Yeah, kinda like the Misty Taylor from earlier. And plus that he's innocent, did nothing wrong, is basically being framed, and that he'll be home soon. 2 months later, in June of 2017, Jason was indicted for the case of Zebb Quinn on a first-degree murder charge. On July 25th of 2022, Robert Jason Owens was convicted of accessory after the fact to the first-degree murder of Zebb Quinn. He was given a term of 150 to 189 months to run concurrently with his other sentencing. Jason released an entire letter to the police detailing exactly what occurred on January 2nd of 2000. This is what it said.
At 8 Owens Cove Road. On Sunday afternoon, January 1st of 2000, Gene came up to the house. While I was cleaning my truck, he asked me if I knew Zebb from Walmart. I told him yes. We had gone fishing a few times together. He then told me that Zebb was talking to this girl Misty who had a jealous boyfriend, and that Misty wanted Zebb to come up by Lake Powhatan where she was camping that night. He then asked me if I would go to Walmart to tell him and then take him up there. I said sure. He asked if I knew the dirt road on the right before the lake where everyone rode their bikes. I told him yes and asked him, I thought camping wasn't allowed up there. And he told me it was posted, but they never enforced it. So I said sure. At Walmart. I went to Walmart and told Zebb. He said okay, and then told me about Misty having a baby with this boyfriend that mistreated her. He then told me that the boyfriend had threatened him the week before. Next, he told me him plus Misty was supposed to go to Gatlinburg the next day. I told him I would meet him after work, and we would go find where she was camping, at the dirt road. After he got off, we left heading up there, stopping for drinks at the gas station. Since we got to the dirt road, we had to drive it seemed forever before we seen anyone. Finally, we seen my Uncle Gene's truck. I pulled past him and backed in beside him. Gene got out of his truck and walked to the back of his truck, and I did the same. Zebb left his car in the road and came over. I asked Gene where Misty was, and he said she would be there in a few minutes. Zebb had turned looking down the trail when Gene pulled out a .22 rifle and shot him in the back of the head. Zebb spun and dropped. I took off around my truck, jumped in, and threw it in drive. As I punched the gas pulling out, I hit Zebb's car. My head hit the steering wheel. Before I could back up to clear Zebb's car, Gene ran around to my driver's side yelling, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I'm not going to shoot you." I seen his hands were empty. I asked him, "Why did you shoot him?" Gene said he was poking his nose somewhere he shouldn't. Someone had to teach him a lesson. I remember thinking, how is that teaching someone a lesson? I told I needed to go. I was going into work early. He then told me, don't think about calling the cops because I was an accomplice. Then he told me that was the stolen .22 my Aunt Sarah had traded my mom, and she had given it to him to get rid of, and he knew it had my fingerprint on it too. I just sat there and didn't know what to say. He then told me to go home and make sure Mom knew what time it was when I got home. At the dirt road again. I went home and went to bed. I just laid there tossing and turning. I couldn't sleep. At 3, I got up and headed to work. On my way to work, I decided to ride back up there and see if he just left Zebb laying there. When I got up there, I saw Zebb's car clean backed and hit. I didn't see Zebb. I decided to go on up to the next pull-off to turn around. When I came around the curve, I seen Gene's truck. As I drove on up, I seen Gene and a big campfire behind him. I pulled in and he motioned for me to get out of the truck. When I did, I seen Zebb's legs hanging out the campfire. Gene told me, "I see you have come to roast marshmallows with me?" I told him no, and I needed to get on to work, and he told me since I decided to come back up there, I would have to stay until he was finished. I told him I definitely had to be at work by 6, and he said he didn't care. I had to stay however long it took. So I just sat on a rock while he kept trying to small talk. There was a big stack of limbs he kept breaking to feed the fire. Finally, when it was mostly burned up, he went to his truck and got a jacket and went to the creek several times putting out the ashes. Then he got a shovel out and threw the wet ashes down in the woods. After that, he picked up a big piece of skull that had a few teeth left in it that was in the ground behind the campfire and took it over to the creek. He said he was going to bury it under the water so no dogs could pick up the scent. I watched where he placed it under the water and rocks. He was ready to leave and reached behind the tree and pulled out the .22 rifle with a squirrel on the stock and put it behind his truck seat. He then told me to call into work for Zebb later that day, and I told him Zebb wasn't supposed to work. I then told him I probably don't have a job anymore because of him, that Volvo had a no call, no show, no job policy. He then told me to go to urgent care since I had the knot on my head and get a doctor's note for a car accident. So, in order to save my job, that's what I did. As we were leaving, Gene told me to stop by his home after work.
Jason continued talking about how he went to urgent care and called into Zebb's job pretending to be him. He also talked about how the detectives came to his house and how Gene showed him a hidden door that had the rifle in it. Jason further stated about Gene and what he did over the years while his mother had cancer. That honestly just leaves me with way more questions than answers. So if we attempt to take what Jason Owens said at face value, we really can't. He's a compulsive liar. His uncle, Walter Gene Owens, died on July 8th of 2017 at the age of 66 years old to cardiac arrest. So the police were never really able to get any information from Gene, though I did read from some locals he was a weird guy, and they suspect him of doing things. I also think that a lot of people think he wasn't responsible for the murder of Zebb and that it was just Jason. I can't for sure say what exactly happened to Zebb that night, as Jason left out a lot of important details. For example, where was Zebb's car for 2 weeks? Who was driving it? Where did the puppy come from? And who wrote the exclamation mark and lips? Some people tend to believe that Jason wrote the exclamation mark, as he tends to do this thing where he does a full circle for the period below it. This is shown in a note he wrote. Some people believe that what point they were trying to get across with the puppy and lips was that it could have been puppy love or something along those lines. Also, in the letter that Jason wrote, he stated that Misty was camping up by Lake Powhatan that night and she wanted Zebb to stop by. If we recall correctly, apparently Misty that night was at her mother's home with Zebb's Aunt Ina, her mother, and Wesley, her boyfriend. Misty and Wesley are still together, by the way. They've had multiple children, and get this, right? They run a dog breeding business. Now, let's ask a few more questions. If Jason got charged as an accessory to murder, why haven't both Misty and Wesley been charged? Jason stated the reason his Uncle Gene supposedly killed Zebb was because he was hired by Wesley, or Wesley just wanted him to do it or something. So if Wesley hired Uncle Gene to murder Zebb, where's his arrest? Plus, with the fact that even the police believe that Misty Taylor was the one driving Zebb's car, what about that? And did they ever do any DNA tests for hair follicles of the jacket that was found in Zebb's car, or DNA from the drinks? Also, with the hotel card, wouldn't there be some sort of way to figure out where it belonged to? They know there's only so many hotels in the area, so did they go to every single one and just look through the reservation list to see if they saw any familiar names? Or if the hotel card matched? I mean, it did have a specific description on it, and it was metal. Not all hotel cards are the same. Oh, and just to mention, the dog that was found inside of the car was adopted by one of the officers, and she was given a great life. So now, with all of this, we're left with more questions than answers, and hopefully one day something will come of this. Jason eventually led police to where he said Gene dumped Zebb's ashes or body parts, but obviously if they were ashes and it was 20 years ago, they wouldn't be there. Some more questions are, who the heck paged Zebb that night from his aunt's house? And who called from his dad's house only 3 minutes after to his aunt's? It would be kind of hard to believe that both of them would be involved in a cover-up. And so many other people too. And I think the biggest thing there is, why would there even be a cover-up? But it is 100% a fact that Zebb was paged by his aunt's number that night, and that Zebb's father's number called his aunt's 3 minutes later. I find it strange that Jason never mentioned that in the letter he wrote, but he did mention it when he was questioned the first time about Zebb. Plus, let's not forget to mention, once again, the fact that Jason named his dog Misty. There's no possible way he wouldn't remember or pinpoint that name to Misty Taylor. Perhaps he was obsessed with all of this or something. I mean, what he did to the Cods was sickening. So what actually 100% happened to Zebb is a mystery. And I personally believe that there is way more to this than Jason is letting up. The question is why? Why would he not implicate the other people involved further? Though he sort of did in a way, he just left out a lot of crucial details that make this case so bizarre. I want to know your thoughts and opinions. Zebb was an innocent guy who was just looking to get forward in life, and he was excited about his future. He was enrolled for another semester at college, and he unfortunately really liked Misty, and evil people decided to take him away. I hope he's resting peacefully and that this family is doing okay. Both Christy and JT were also very good and hardworking, ambitious people that were so excited to start a family together. They moved far from what they were normally used to into a small town to try and have a great farm life. They trusted their neighbors and never expected anything like that to occur. Christy and JT even paid Jason thousands of dollars, even though his work was in order to try and help him. They were very kind to him, and he repaid them by murdering them, their unborn child, and stealing money and other things from them. Personally, I believe he lied about what he said happened to them. I don't know what truly transpired that awful day, but whatever Jason Owens did was pure evil, and he's a chronic liar. Whatever happens to him, he deserves it. Rest in peace to Christy Showing Cod and JT Cod. I hope you both and your unborn baby girl are all resting peacefully. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please like and subscribe because it's all we do. I also have an all-exclusive Patreon if you're interested in that. There's a bunch of tiers to choose from, and the third one allows for you to see a Patreon-only video, and that tier and the second one allow you to have your name at the end of each High Time Crime video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.